Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy daily stories about cheating, revenge, and relationship advice. The ballroom glittered under the soft glow of chandeliers, casting shimmering reflections on the sea of expensive suits and evening gowns. Corporate events like these were always a show, an endless parade of back-patting, fake laughs, and thinly veiled ambition. I stood by the bar, swirling the amber liquid in my glass, feeling like an observer in my own life. The drinks flowed, the laughter echoed, but all I could think about was the uneasy knot forming in my gut. My wife, Laura, had been making her rounds through the crowd, her smile radiant, her laughter too perfect. She always had a way of captivating a room, drawing people toward her as if she was magnetic. But tonight, something felt off. It wasn't just her usual charm, it was something more calculated, more dangerous. I leaned against the bar, my eyes narrowing as I followed her movements across the room. She was talking to a group of executives, men I had known for years. They stood too close to her, their body language suggesting something more than professional respect. Laura's hand brushed one man's arm, and I clenched my fist around my glass. "Another drink, sir?" the bartender asked, jolting me out of my thoughts. I glanced at my nearly empty glass, debating whether I should dull the growing tension in my chest with more alcohol. "Yeah, sure. Make it a double." He nodded, quickly pouring the drink, but my attention was no longer on him. Laura had moved to a quieter corner of the room, away from the main crowd. I watched as three men followed her: Tom Wilkins, a VP from sales, Greg Daniels, head of finance, and Michael Turner, one of the senior partners. My stomach churned as I saw them crowd around her, their heads huddled together as if sharing a secret. "What the hell is she doing?" I muttered under my breath. Curiosity and suspicion gnawed at me. I told myself it was probably innocent. Laura was charming, and these men were powerful players in the company. Maybe they were just discussing work. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I had felt the growing distance between us for months, but I had convinced myself that it was just the stress of her career. Then, she touched Tom's arm again, this time lingering longer. Too long. I couldn't look away. Greg leaned in, whispering something into her ear. Her lips curled into a flirtatious smile, and she laughed softly, her fingers brushing Greg's chest. My heart pounded in my chest, the reality of what I was seeing finally sinking in. I needed to get closer, to see if what I was imagining was really happening. I set my drink down and weaved through the crowd, my heart hammering louder with each step. When I was just a few feet away, I could hear fragments of their conversation. "I think we should all meet again, soon," Laura purred, her voice dripping with suggestion. "We could use a more private setting," Greg added, his hand sliding down her back. Tom chuckled, his eyes flicking toward the others. "I think we could make that happen." I stopped in my tracks, the final thread of hope snapping. This wasn't innocent. This wasn't business. My wife was openly flirting with these men, acting as if I didn't exist, as if our marriage didn't exist. It wasn't just one man, it was three. They were all involved in this sick game, and she was right there in the middle of it. My hands trembled, and I felt my face flush with a mix of humiliation and rage. I wanted to storm over, grab her, and demand an explanation. But as I stood there, frozen in disbelief, something stopped me. If I confronted her now, here, she would deny it. She would twist the narrative, make me look like the jealous husband who couldn't handle his wife's success. No. I needed something stronger than an argument. I needed proof. "James." A voice startled me from behind. I turned to see Kevin, one of my colleagues, standing there with a drink in hand. He was smiling, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "Everything all right, man? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile, though it felt like my face was cracking under the effort. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking about work," he asked, clearly not picking up on the tension radiating off me. "I get it, man. Big project coming up and all." Everyone's feeling the pressure. I nodded absently, my mind racing. Yeah, something like that. Kevin glanced past me, spotting Laura and the group. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Laura sure knows how to work a crowd, huh? Always the center of attention. Yeah, I said through gritted teeth. She's something, all right. Kevin laughed, clapping me on the shoulder. Lucky guy, James. She's a catch. Lucky. That word echoed in my head like a cruel joke. I turned away from Kevin, my eyes locking onto Laura one last time. She was now leaning in, whispering something into Michael's ear, her lips dangerously close to his neck. My blood boiled. Excuse me, I muttered, brushing past Kevin and heading for the exit. I couldn't stay in that room any longer. I needed air. I needed a plan. As I stepped out into the cool night, the enormity of what I had just witnessed weighed down on me. This wasn't just about an affair. It was about betrayal on a level I hadn't thought possible. I couldn't confront her tonight, not without solid evidence. But when I did, when I had the proof, there would be no hiding. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found Mike's number. He was the only one who could help me now. The line rang once, then twice before he picked up. James. What's up? Mike's voice was casual, but I could barely contain my urgency. Mike, I need your help. It's about Laura. The office was eerily quiet as I waited for Mike. The hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional distant click of a keyboard were the only sounds breaking the silence. I paced back and forth in the small conference room, my mind racing with plans and contingencies. The truth about Laura's betrayal had hit me hard, and I knew that revenge alone wouldn't suffice. I needed to expose her, and for that, I needed evidence. The door creaked open, and Mike walked in, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. He was wearing his usual casual attire, a hoodie and jeans, his hair slightly disheveled. His presence was a stark contrast to the formal suits of the corporate world, and right now, his casual demeanor was a comfort. Hey, James, he said, setting his bag down on the table. Got the footage you asked for. It's pretty damning. I gestured for him to sit. Good. Let's see it. Mike pulled out his laptop and connected it to the conference room projector. The screen flickered to life, and the security footage from the party appeared. My heart pounded as I saw the scene from the previous night, the crowded ballroom, Laura's vibrant smile, and the three men who had surrounded her. Just so you know, Mike said, his eyes focused on the screen, I had to dig through a lot of footage to get to this. The cameras don't exactly have the best resolution, but it's clear enough to see what's happening. I appreciate it, I said, though my mind was already drifting to the next step. We need to make sure this footage gets out at the right moment. I want everyone to see it, especially the board members and executives. Mike nodded, clicking through the footage. I've highlighted the relevant parts. You can see her interactions with Tom, Greg, and Michael. The timestamps and everything are all marked. The screen displayed Laura leaning in closely with Tom Wilkins, whispering something in his ear. Her hand rested on his arm, and I could see the flirtatious glances exchanged. My blood boiled again as I watched her with Greg Daniels, and finally, with Michael Turner. Each interaction was more compromising than the last. This is more than enough to prove she was involved, Mike said, his voice low. But are you sure you want to go through with this? There's a lot at stake. I've never been more certain, I replied, trying to sound resolute. She made a fool of me. I need to expose her for what she really is. Mike gave a reluctant nod. All right. What's the plan? I'll arrange for a meeting with the board members at the next event, I explained. I'll release the footage then, and while everyone is distracted, I'll call the police. They need to see the full extent of what's happening. Mike raised an eyebrow. You think they'll act on it immediately? I hope so, I said, my jaw set. But I'm not just going to let her and her cronies get away with it. I want to see them all pay for what they've done. Just as we were finalizing the details, there was a knock on the door. Emily stepped in, her face drawn and serious. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, her eyes darting between Mike and me. "Not at all," I said, motioning for her to join us. "In fact, your timing is perfect. We're just about to discuss the next steps." Emily took a seat, her expression troubled. "I came to see if you need any help with the fallout. I know it's going to be messy, and I want to make sure we're prepared." I nodded, relieved by her willingness to assist. "That would be helpful. I plan to release the footage at the next corporate event and then call the police. We need to make sure everyone involved is exposed and held accountable." Emily's eyes widened. "You're going to involve the police? That's serious. Are you sure you want to go that route?" "It's not just about Laura's affair anymore," I said, my voice steady. "It's about the corruption she's been involved in. If we don't act now, she'll continue to cover it up, and more people will get hurt." Emily took a deep breath, nodding slowly. "All right. I'll help however I can. Just let me know what you need." As Emily and Mike exchanged a few more details, I felt a surge of determination. The plan was coming together, and while I knew there would be fallout, it was a risk I was willing to take. Laura had crossed a line, and the consequences would be severe. With the plan set in motion, I felt a grim satisfaction. The truth would be revealed, and justice would be served. But as the hours ticked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. There were deeper layers to uncover, and the real battle was still ahead. "Thanks for helping with this," I said to Mike and Emily as we wrapped up the meeting. "I couldn't do it without you." Mike nodded. "Just remember, once this starts, there's no turning back." "I understand," I replied. "And I'm ready." As they left, I remained in the conference room, staring at the now blackened screen. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but one thing was clear: the fight was far from over. The following days were a whirlwind of preparations. Emily had been a crucial ally, helping me gather all the necessary materials and organizing everything for the next corporate event. We had scheduled a meeting with the board, where I planned to reveal the footage. However, just as the plan seemed foolproof, a new layer of complexity emerged. I was working late one evening, hunched over a stack of documents in my home office. The room was dimly lit, and the only sounds were the tapping of my keyboard and the occasional rustle of paper. My phone buzzed on the desk, and I glanced at it. It was a message from Emily: "We need to talk. Urgent." Frowning, I quickly dialed her number. "Hey, Emily," I said when she picked up. "What's going on?" "I'm at Mike's place," she said, her voice tight. "I've been going through some files and, well, I've uncovered something else. It's about Laura, but also about the corruption." My heart skipped a beat. "What did you find?" "Meet me here as soon as you can," she said. "It's too complicated to explain over the phone." I agreed and drove over to Mike's apartment, my mind racing with possibilities. When I arrived, Emily was waiting for me at the door, her face pale and anxious. "James, thank you for coming," she said, ushering me inside. Mike was already there, looking equally concerned. "What's this about?" I asked, noticing the tension in the room. Emily led me to the living room where Mike was sitting with a laptop open in front of him. On the screen were several documents and emails, some of which were marked with bright red highlights. While I was helping Emily with the files, Mike began, his tone serious. "We stumbled upon something unexpected. These documents suggest that Laura's involvement in the corruption was far more extensive than we initially thought. And it's not just her. There's a larger network involved." I sat down, trying to absorb the gravity of the situation. "What kind of network?" Emily took a deep breath. "It looks like Laura was working as a middleman for a much larger operation. There's evidence pointing to a systematic scheme of embezzlement, money laundering, and bribery. And it goes all the way to the top." Mike nodded, clicking through the documents. "We found evidence of communication between Laura and someone named Richard Blackwood. The emails suggest she was coordinating with him for several illegal transactions." Richard Blackwood. The name was familiar. He was the CEO of the company, a man whose influence was virtually untouchable. My mind raced. If Blackwood was involved, then exposing Laura was only the tip of the iceberg. Are you saying Laura was working directly with Blackwood? I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. That's what it looks like, Mike confirmed. And from the documents, it seems like Laura was just one part of a much larger scheme. If we expose her, we also need to bring Blackwood down. He's the mastermind behind the corruption. Emily's face was grim. We're talking about a serious network of illegal activities here. If we're going to do this, we need to be prepared for serious consequences. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision settling on my shoulders. I knew Laura's betrayal was just the start, but this is bigger than I imagined. We need to expose both Laura and Blackwood. If we don't, the corruption will continue unchecked. Mike looked at me with a mix of concern and resolve. Do you have a plan for how to handle Blackwood? He's a powerful figure, and going after him won't be easy. I'm working on it, I said, though I could feel the pressure mounting. The immediate goal is to use the footage to make a public statement and then call the authorities. We need to make sure the information about Blackwood is handed over to the police as well. Emily nodded. I'll help with that. I have connections with some investigative journalists who might be able to assist us in getting the story out to the public. Mike added, and I'll continue to dig through the data. We need every piece of evidence we can get. We spent the next few hours poring over the documents and strategizing our next moves. The enormity of the task ahead was daunting, but the realization that Laura's betrayal was part of something far more significant fueled my determination. As I left Mike's apartment, my thoughts were a whirlwind of plans and possibilities. The road ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but one thing was clear: the fight for justice had only just begun. I knew the battle was far from over, and the true challenge would be taking down the orchestrator of the corruption, Richard Blackwood. But for now, the immediate task was to ensure that Laura's and Blackwood's misdeeds were exposed and addressed. And I was ready to see it through, no matter the cost. The days that followed were a blur of activity. With Emily's connections and Mike's relentless digging, we managed to compile a mountain of evidence against Laura and the corrupt executives. The day of the corporate event arrived, and with it, the culmination of our efforts. The room was filled with the usual array of high-powered suits and polished smiles, but today, it felt different. I had a hidden agenda, and it was about to unfold. I arrived early to set up the projector and ensure that everything was in place for the big reveal. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the settings, but I forced myself to remain calm. This was my moment, and I couldn't afford to falter. Emily arrived soon after, her expression a mixture of nervousness and resolve. "Everything ready?" she asked, checking the setup with a critical eye. "As ready as it'll ever be," I said, giving her a reassuring nod. "The footage will play, and once the room is filled with board members and executives, we'll hit play. They need to see exactly who Laura really is." Emily glanced around the room. "And the police? Are they on standby?" "Yeah," I replied. "They're waiting for my signal. As soon as the footage is out and the shockwaves start, I'll make the call." The room began to fill with guests, their conversations a low hum of anticipation. The board members, the executives, and a few high-profile clients gathered, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. I could see Laura among them, her demeanor relaxed, her smile too polished. She had no idea what was coming. I took a deep breath and approached the podium. The room quieted as I began speaking, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "Good evening, everyone," I said, addressing the crowd. "Thank you all for joining us tonight. I'd like to take this opportunity to present some important information regarding recent events within our company." Laura's eyes flickered to me, a puzzled expression crossing her face. She looked around, trying to gauge the room's reaction. I could see the glimmer of unease in her eyes, but it was quickly masked by her professional facade. "I've recently come across some footage from a recent corporate event," I continued. This footage reveals some serious misconduct involving several key individuals within the company. I gestured to the projector, and the screen flickered to life. The footage began playing, and the room was soon filled with murmurs of surprise and disbelief. I watched as the images of Laura and the executives appeared on the screen, their illicit interactions clearly visible. The tension in the room was palpable as people began to piece together the gravity of what they were seeing. The footage reached the part where Laura was seen in close conversation with Tom Wilkins, Greg Daniels, and Michael Turner. The room grew silent, the collective gasp of shock and embarrassment echoing through the crowd. This is unbelievable," someone whispered from the back of the room. Laura's face had gone white, her eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. Her composure was slipping, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her carefully maintained facade. The murmurs grew louder, and I knew it was time to act. I stepped away from the podium and pulled out my phone, dialing the number of the police contact I had prepared. As the line rang, I could hear the growing buzz of conversation and the sound of chairs scraping as people moved about, trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. The police dispatcher answered, and I quickly explained the situation. "We have clear evidence of corporate misconduct and illegal activities. I need officers here immediately." "Understood," the dispatcher said. "We'll send a unit right away." Before I could hang up, I heard a commotion from the back of the room. Richard Blackwood, the CEO, had entered, his face a mask of controlled rage. He strode toward me with purpose, his eyes locking onto mine. "James," he said, his voice a low growl. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "Exposing the truth," I replied evenly. "Your corruption and Laura's actions are now public. The police are on their way." Blackwood's expression shifted to one of cold calculation. "You're playing a dangerous game, James. You don't know what you're up against." "I'm not afraid," I said, meeting his gaze. "People deserve to know the truth. The corruption you've orchestrated is about to come to light." Emily moved to stand beside me, her face determined. "You won't get away with this, Blackwood. We have all the evidence we need." Blackwood's eyes flickered with a mix of anger and fear. "You think this is the end? You have no idea what you're dealing with." Before he could say anything else, the doors burst open, and a team of police officers entered the room. They moved with a sense of purpose, their presence adding to the charged atmosphere. "James Harris," one of the officers called out. "We're here to take control of the situation. Please direct us to the relevant individuals." I nodded, leading them toward Laura and the other executives who were still in shock. As the officers began to gather the evidence and question those involved, I felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. The battle was far from over, and the real fight was only just beginning. Emily stood beside me, her hand on my arm. "You did it. The truth is out there." "Yeah," I said, my voice tinged with a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. "But this is just the start. We still need to make sure Blackwood is brought to justice." As the scene unfolded, I knew that the true test would be the fight against the corruption at the very top. But for now, seeing Laura and the other executives confronted with the evidence was a small victory. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face whatever came next. The pursuit of justice was just beginning, and I was determined to see it through to the end.